Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Tim's Final Confessions. I'm joined once again by John, the Music Nut, and we are continuing with our Y&T Deep Dive series. John, how are you?
Well, I'm not as young and tough as I used to be, but I'm still a hurricane. How about you, Tim?
Look, I could use rescuing sometimes, but hey,
There you go.
uh, I'm always hungry for rock. Yeah, we're moving along. We have entered the 80s, and we are here to talk about 1981's Earthshaker, the third Y&T album. And it's interesting, John. Talking about Y&T, there are folks that like the early stuff. There are folks that like the mid-period stuff. There are folks that like us that basically like all of it. But if there's one album that basically everybody agrees on is a killer album, it's this one we're talking about here. What version of the CD did you have just there that you held up?
Well, I have the Crescendo Records version, which was released
Okay.
in 2008.
I have one of those.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I have one of those. I have the Open Fire, and I bought that on CD because it had the Flames cover, and I wanted a CD with the Flames cover.
Nice. Yeah.
Other than that, it's exactly the same. So this Earthshaker CD here is my old Japanese import CD
Oh, okay.
from that I bought
Oh,
in
there you go.
1991. And the story here behind this is that, I got into Y&T the year before. I could find everything from Black Tiger onward, mostly just on cassette. And I could not find the first two albums and Earthshaker anywhere. And I was looking at a Circus magazine in the grocery store. And there used to be these forms at the end of the magazines where you could send away.
I remember.
And there was a place in Connecticut called The Right Choice. And they had Earthshaker listed on CD. And it was $39.99 US. Now, I'm up here in Canada. At the time, the exchange rate between the US and Canadian dollar wasn't that bad. I don't know if it was like 83, 84 cents on the dollar, but our our dollar had a little bit more buying power in the States than it does now. So I remember thinking, well, what would that come to? And it ended up coming to about $50. And I'd never sent away for anything before because I always figured that it's a ripoff. But
Right.
such was my fandom of Y&T that I took a chance and sent away for Earthshaker. And it took about 2 months. I figured I'd been ripped off, but it came.
There you go.
And I remember being very surprised when I got it because, first of all, it doesn't have the Y&T logo. I kind of like this primitive logo they used for this one album. It's not as cool as the real logo, but I like it, and I like the blue. And I already knew 4 of the 6 songs on this, actually 5, because 4 of the songs were on the best of 81 to 85, and then 1 was on Yesterday and Today Live, which had just come out that summer. So I knew half of the album, but hearing the whole thing in sequence was just, mind-blowing. And I also ended up getting the CD that the band sold on their website in 2005. Now, this one doesn't have any extra songs on it.
Okay.
But it's got some cool liner notes from the guys. It's got this cool picture on the back of the CD tray. So, I was excited when those came out. But the really funny thing is, John, I would have been perfectly happy in 91 because I still was buying a lot of cassettes if I could have found this.
Right.
But I found this cassette in 2006. It took me years to find Earthshaker on cassette. It looks just like all the other A&M cassettes.
Yes, it does.
But,
well, I was going to say, this thought went to my mind back in the 80s. You couldn't find that cassette in the local record stores. You were able to find Black Tiger and Mean Streak, and I had friends who had them. That's how I heard the albums in the 80s.
Yeah.
I didn't buy them until CD, and I bought them from Y&T themselves. But Earthshaker, it took me a long time before I actually saw it out in the wild, even though it was everyone said it was their best album. It was so well represented on Open Fire and on Best of
Yeah.
YNT 81, 85.
Yeah, exactly. And even used, I've only seen it once in it, like in a used record store. The version that I have, I got off of eBay, and it's actually from Holland.
Okay.
So yeah, I
Okay.
think it looks just like most of the international versions, and it's on A&M and all that. But
Right.
yeah, it's not an easy one to find, but it's what a great record. And like I said, this is the peacemaker in the Y&T catalog, because pretty much everybody agrees this is a great album. So
That's
as
true.
is our custom on our deep dive, I think that we should go through it track by track. So first thing you hear is "Hungry for Rock." What do you think of this opener?
Well, this is a great hard rock album, but this is my least favorite song on the album
Really?
because of the cliched lyrics. I'm hungry for rock. I'm ready to roll. It's okay. I mean, it's a good song musically, but the only thing I'm not a fan of is the lyrics. I can't say that about anything else on the album, but this is my least favorite song, and I still like it. How about
Cool.
you?
I like it. I mean, I was hungry for, not just hungry for rock,
Right.
but I to me this was new, because this is a song I'd not heard. So it can just,
Right.
guitar comes on and the drums kick in, and I got to say, I love the production on this album.
Me too.
Um, I If this album had been really successful, I have a feeling they would have stuck with um, Robert Shulman and David Seath, because
Yes.
they get this thick, thunderous sound, and there's different parts, parts of the songs that use it to really great effect. Um, cool little piece of trivia, and I didn't know this until I got the 2005 remaster. The shouted vocals at the end, where everybody's saying "Hungry for Rock," those include members of the R&B band Maze,
Oh, really?
because they were in the next studio down
Nice.
recording, and they just needed a bunch of people to come in and shout "Hungry for Rock." So a little bit of trivia there for you. And
Wow.
another thing that's interesting about this song, that opening guitar solo is Joey Alves. He plays
Okay.
the first half of the guitar solo, and then Dave takes over. Read that in the liner notes too.
Hmm.
Definitely worth, if you can now. I don't know how easy they are to finding those 2005 remasters they put out through their website. They did Earthshaker through In Rock We Trust. They never got to Down for the Count or Open Fire.
Right. It's true.
So next up is an all-time Y&T classic. I've got the UK 12-inch single here,
Oh,
"Dirty
nice.
Girl," which is just a close-up of the album cover on the back. Just that same photo of the band, and it's got a couple other tracks from the album. But this is a concert staple. What do you think of this song?
Absolutely. Yeah. This is one of their most endearing and enduring songs. It's very different for 1981. With the guitar line, with the space between the notes, and then you have the chunky riffs, and you have those chunky riffs that Joey's playing, and then Dave doing those little soulful leads before the chorus kicks in. And it's a very different sound, but Dave, his vocals blossomed here. Like, I thought they were really on their way on Struck Down. And then on Earthshaker, he was right there. This is the Y&T you know and love. This, I love the stop start riffs in the chorus. Yeah, this is one of their best songs, one of their most enduring ones. You still hear this on Sirius Ozzy's Boneyard on Sirius XM, channel 38. You hear it on, you still hear it on there quite a bit. When you might hear like 5 Y&T songs, and this is the one that you always hear. But this is also on Best of 81, 85.
Yeah, that's right.
So,
First
and I
heard.
think every time I've seen them 3 times, and I believe all 3 times I saw them, they did do this song live. Yep, this is a staple.
Yeah, I don't think they missed this one on set list too much.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, it's funny, because the same time that I got Best of 81 to 85, I also happened to find the Live at the San Francisco Civic VHS from
From
85.
MTV.
Yeah. And it's a shortened version. I found out later. It's only an hour long. I guess the concert was longer than that, but I think Dirty Girl's the second song they do. So yeah. And this is where you really hear the power in Leonard's drums and the production when you got that boots, gods, in between. Dun, 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 dun. And I love the combination of the sort of jazzy, clean guitar, like that, and then you've got just the power chords, down, 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 like it's a great, great, great song. And yeah, I can see why, as a musician, they would have fun playing it because you just throw yourself into that groove. It's easy for people to bang their heads to, and it's catchy. It's catchy, and yeah, it's got a great. Dave starts solo playing like really bluesy licks, and then does a typical electric, distortion drenched solo, and yeah, it's all really good. Next up is "Shake It Loose," short little number. What do you think of this one?
Just a great little party song. Not reinventing the wheel or anything. It just rocks. Not even 3 minutes. It just gets its point across. It's just very solid. Not one of the best songs on the album, but there's nothing on here you could call a dud or mediocre or anything. Everything on here is solid to spectacular. Yeah. And Shake It Loose keeps up that party feel of the album.
Yeah, but Leonard's drums at the beginning where it's just playing, him playing, and then you hear Dave, and then the rest of the band kicks in. You really hear Leonard's that crazy bass drum work with the single bass pedal. I've always really liked this song. It's short and sweet, like you said, short and sweet, to the point, and it's got these tricky little down, and especially towards the end, because the drums kind of go against the beat sometimes. I mean, I've always said, these guys have such a good sense of dynamics that even in the middle of a party rocker, there's some chops. And yeah.
Yep.
Next up, Squeeze featuring Phil Kennemore on lead vocals. What do you think of this one?
Far and away my favorite Phil Kennemore sung song. This is just at a breakneck pace. Leonard shines like the sun on this one. Phil's vocal, I mean, he's not doing the Beatles-esque stuff like he goes into on the later albums when he'd have a song on a couple of those albums. Here, this is just a wicked rocker. Everybody's does a great job. Dave has a fantastic solo on it. It just grabs you by the throat. It goes for the throat.
Yeah, the first time I heard this, like I said, it was on Yesterday and Today Live, which of course is Steph Burns and Jimmy DeGrasso. I'd never heard the song before, and I didn't know at this point, because I'm that early in my Y&T fandom, I didn't know Phil ever sang. I didn't know anybody but Dave ever sang. So this was a learning thing, and and Dave even says, "I'm gonna turn the mic over to my 17-year-old partner here," and realize very quickly it's not Dave singing, but what a great song, and it's got this off the rails, out of control feel to it. Now, granted, the version, like the Steph and Jimmy version of Y&T, I always compare to the Eric Singer, Bruce Kulick version of Kiss. They were so good.
Absolutely.
There's not that off the rails feel because they're so good. But the version that's on Earthshaker is just nuts. Like, it's just total abandon. Leonard's on fire on this. And yeah, I love Dave's solo, where it's no bass or rhythm guitar. It's just the drums are thumping along. And I think one of the things they would always do live, or they did back then, is like Joey would put his arms in the air and Dave would walk behind Joey and solo on his guitar. Because I've seen pictures of them like that. And yeah, it's definitely my favorite, Phil vocal, because his vocal fits this song. It's sleazy, it's dirty, it's I don't care, it's and it fits, and it's and as people can read, and here's the shameless plug, people can read in Down for the Count, Y&T album review. Joe Beck said that when he first got into Y&T was with this album, because the local radio station he listened to would play part of Squeeze as a commercial. And they ended up calling the radio station. They didn't play the song in their rotation. They just played it on this commercial, which didn't make any sense for me. But they ended up calling, "Who is that singing that song?" And that's how they were introduced. But yeah, in recent years, since Phil Cunningham passed away, John Nyman will take lead vocals on it. Maybe you've seen that happen. I know that Live at the Mystic, he sings it.
I'm trying to. I know they did it the second and third times. I'm gonna say I didn't see them play this live yet. I don't think they played. I don't think they played it the first time I saw them in Sellersville. But yeah, which was a great night, and they went all over the catalog. But I don't believe they played that song that night. I could be wrong. I'll go back on Setlist FM after we're done. Look, but I don't recall it right now. So
if anybody wants to hear what it sounds like with John singing it, pick up Live at the Mystic, because that's the only. I think that's the only officially released version. And we have side one closing with Rescue Me. And I have this is a Spanish 45, which just combines the front and back covers, really. It's got Shake It Loose on the back. This is a staple for Y&T. This was a major radio hit for them, especially in the Bay Area.
Right.
Got a ton of radio play. And this is one of those songs that if they'd shot a video for it, and it would have gotten some MTV play.
Absolutely. I agree with that.
It's heavy. I think for 1981, I'm just trying to think. It's heavy for top 40 radio, but I think it's catchy enough that it could have broken through with the right promotion.
I agree with that. Yeah, because it's kind of a power ballad, but it's
fast and it's driving.
Yeah. Right. It's fast and driving, but it's just the fact that Dave sounds so emotional on the verses and then he screams on the choruses. And then when they go into the solo, it starts out kind of slow, but then it gets really heavy. And then it starts picking up speed before they go back into the last chorus. Leonard's raising the tempo on that. So yeah, this is a fantastic track. And first time I heard it was on Open Fire.
Yeah.
And that album, I mean, to me, that was like a revelation, because that was the second album I knew I had by them after In Rock We Trust, and I bought it in real time. To me, that was almost like how Kiss Alive 1 was to me a few years earlier. Well, actually, it may have been a year and a half earlier. And I was like, holy crap, are these guys amazing live? When I heard this live, I was like, wow, I mean, this sound, they're playing this with so much conviction.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying the studio version isn't strong. It certainly is. But live, this is a monster live. There's a lot more drama when they play it live.
I think that you've raised a good point, because I think a lot of people probably did hear this first in Open Fire, because Earthshaker came out, was critically acclaimed. UK just loved it, part of the new wave British heavy metal, but it didn't chart in the States, neither did Black Tiger. And I think that might be why. I used to wonder about this, but there are no songs from Mean Streaker and Rock We Trust on Open Fire.
Yeah.
A lot of Earthshaker and a lot of Black Tiger. And I think that might have been A&M's way of trying to stir up album sales. Now that I think, I've only just thought of that now, because I always used to wonder, but if In Rock We Trust, you figure a lot of people already have that. Mean Streak probably right behind it in terms of sales, because it charted.
Yes.
Open Fire was the next thing to come out. So yeah, I think a lot of people probably heard those songs from Earthshaker, maybe even Black Tiger first. The ones that are on Open Fire, those might be the definitive versions, but
especially in the state, especially in North America.
Yeah.
Because in Europe, they were already catching hold, and they were open up for AC/DC on the For Those Butts of Rock tour, when AC/DC were at their pinnacle, because that was their first #1 album in the States, even though Back in Black is overtaken in sales maybe 8 or 10.
I think it has the momentum of coming out, being the next thing to, unless you count the reissue of Dirty Deeds, which is why
that's true too.
Get off topic just a little bit, but for the Bon Scott albums, that's why that album spikes way up compared to the rest of them. But that's why.
Exactly. Yep. It's true.
Okay, so we flip it over to side 2, and you've already mentioned the song title, Young and Tough. Probably at that time, maybe new fans that just caught on with Earthshaker might have thought that's what the band name stood for. But what were your thoughts on this one?
This is something that could have been easily played on the radio in 1981. It was very catchy and melodic. It wasn't heavy to the point where it would be offensive. I mean, it had a nice chorus that you could sing along to. So, teenagers would have been all over this song. Yeah, it's pretty underrated track by them. I mean, you think about if they had gotten if they had videos out in 1981
that would
when
have made it
MTV
perfectly good. Yeah.
when MTV was starting in August of 81, and they
Yeah.
play anything like you've mentioned in some interviews.
They repeated videos a lot because they didn't have that many.
That's
Earthshaker
right.
came out in June.
There you go.
Yeah.
Missed opportunity here, in my opinion.
We talk an awful lot about this
Yes.
company, right?
Yeah. They did right by some bands, but not this band, in my opinion.
I just don't think they were set up to handle a hard rock band, I guess. I don't know, but that's why I wrote a book about it, because
Right.
there's a mystery there. But next up is a song that I first heard on Best of 81-85. It's one of my favorites, Hurricane.
Yep. And that's where I first heard it as well. And yes, Scorcher. This is where you really hear Dave's guitar playing come alive. I mean, fantastic performance. I mean, they sound so hungry here on this song. I mean, this is, and very heavy for 1981. You think about 1981, we didn't have Metallica yet. I mean, they didn't have a record deal yet. They were just getting their feet wet, right?
Yeah.
They were just getting together. This was very heavy for 81, just like the aforementioned Squeeze was.
Yeah.
I mean, this is heavier than nearly anything you'd have out on any hard rock band at this point. But this is wicked. I mean, it just played with so much conviction. Leonard Hayes, again, monster. The rhythms that him and Phil are monsters here. Fantastic track. It's still one of my favorites. Never fails to excite.
Yeah, I love it. It's I first heard it. It was like, I think Best of 81-85. It starts with From the Moon, Open Fire, and I think the very next song is Hurricane. And
it is. Yeah.
It blew me away. I couldn't believe how heavy it sounded. Like I said, that thunderous, thick production, which Black Tiger and Mean Streak didn't have. They had completely different sounding productions on them. I just love this. It's almost smothering, and I don't mean that as an insult, but it just sounds like there's just so much weight behind it. But I also love the fact that it's a singular production throughout the album, and yet there's variety. And this is one of the heaviest. I mean, this is almost Priest heavy. You know what I mean? Like, this is just a heavy driving, metal anthem at a time when, there weren't a lot of them, or there weren't a lot of major label acts doing this. You know what I mean? I'm thinking about, like, Van Halen had Fair Warning that year. I mean, Unchained is a heavy song, but I don't know. There's just something about this that's just fist in the air and great guitar work.
It's funny. You figure 81. You mentioned Judas Priest. Judas Priest were trying to shoot more for the charts at this point because they had point of entry,
right? And
they had a little bit of success for Living After Midnight and Breaking the Law, which was, that was a heavy song, but it was also melodic. It crossed over. They were trying to get more. They were writing more radio friendly songs on point of entry. So something like Hurricane would be heavier than anything on that album, really.
I'll say Hurricane's a lot heavier than Heading Out to the Highway. I mean,
it is, and that's one of the heavier tracks.
Yeah. So next, switching gears, we have Let Me Go. What do you think of this one?
Okay, this is, kind of like Young and Tough in the fact it's another melodic song. It probably could have gotten some radio play. It's not as catchy as Young and Tough, but it's got a good chorus. Good performance on here. It's pretty solid. I mean, I wouldn't say it's one of the better songs, but again, it just keeps up the momentum of a very strong hard rock and roll album.
Yeah. This one's like a darker, moodier, it's almost like a fast ballad. It's not in the Rescue Me league, but it's pretty good. There's some good background vocals in the chorus. But again, this sandwiches in, I think I talk about this in the book, it's sandwiched in between two of the heaviest songs, and yet it doesn't sound out of place. So next up,
exactly,
Knock You Out, another fast, heavy one.
Yep. more relentless pace, blistering heavy metal, near heavy metal track here. This is wicked. This is, you know, they don't get this heavy too much more in the future. If
No,
you
I
really
think
think about
part of that might be the production,
it.
but
Yes.
another aspect of that is that yeah, they just, I don't know, they weren't wired to write these types of songs much longer. Like Mean Street's
Yeah,
really the end of where you find like really old school like metal sounding songs, at
I would
least
agree.
at the time. And then
Yes.
after that, it just became really good hard rock.
Yeah, yeah, they got more melodic as time had passed, you
Yeah.
know. Not to say there isn't plenty of melody on here, but yeah. But here, this may have been like this, and and of course the first two albums, there were some really heavy tracks on there as well. But here they had the songwriting down too. And the recording, of course, was very
Yeah, the
strong.
songwriting, it's also interesting because Shulman and Seif feature in on a lot of the songs here, and that's not normal for Y&T. They must have trusted these guys,
Yes.
and it's some of their most enduring material. So again, it makes me wonder what would have happened if they'd have stuck with it. But
Mhm.
you know, and then finally, you know, Y&T close albums like no one else, and one of the most epic power ballads of all time. I Believe in You Again. This is a UK 12-inch. On this side, it looks like this, and then they reverse it.
Okay.
And there's a little stamp here that just says Out and Out Metal Sounds. So Sounds Magazine, the UK
Right.
loved these guys. And
Yes.
so I don't even know where to start with I Believe in You. So I'm going to let you start.
Well, if there's a song that'll bring you to tears by Y&T, this is the one. And it's Dave's tender vocals, the performance by the band. The thing about Leonard Hayes and a lot of great drummers is when they know when not to play. And he had chops for days, but he keeps reined in here because it's about the feel of the song. It's a very emotional, personal lyric. The solos are amazing, especially Dave's first one. And the second one, the ride out, was insane. But some of the, and even the first part of the solo, he plays it very quiet, almost like his guitar almost sounds like it's crying.
He's doing those volume swells and
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Mm-hmm. And then when it goes in that and then and then the band comes back in,
yeah, yeah,
that's when it goes towards the universe. I mean, it's
yeah.
just an amazing song. It always, one thing I want to mention, this when they play live, they don't wait till the end on this one. They play this in the middle.
Yeah.
And people will stand up for certain songs, but this one they always stretch out, and Dave will play like this amazing solo every time. And at the end, when he's playing those long ringing notes, and they're ending the song, you're seeing everyone just crying, like rising their feet and getting all emotional and all that. I mean, this is their showstopper song. Even though their catalog is so strong, they don't always play it as a showstopper. They usually throw it in the middle, which is, it takes a lot of guts, and I think it says a lot about how strong their catalog is.
Yeah,
One of the
they're
one,
like, hey, we still got this, and this, so don't worry.
right.
Yeah,
So it's like one of the best album closers, in my opinion. It's maybe my favorite song from 1981, even though I didn't know it until maybe 1990 or wait, it would have been 85 because it was
yeah,
on
that's
Open
right.
Fire.
Yeah,
So yeah, but yeah, this is my favorite. It's made me cry so many times. I have to say it's my favorite, right? Yeah.
yeah, it's amazingly emotional, and it was an
Mhm.
emotional song for Dave. He's talked about the inspiration behind it, and yeah, I mean, I the end part where it speeds up ever so slightly, and um, you know, it sounds like it was recorded live in the studio. And I love the point where Leonard switches from hi-hats to the ride cymbal, and he
Mhm.
starts doing the off against the beat fills. But one of the things that I always loved about it, especially after hearing the studio version, is that it's like they end the song, then they end the album. It's you know, when it gets to the part where it goes down, 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 to me, that's the end. It before it was like, okay, we ended the song. Now we're
Right.
ending the album. It just feels like thank you and good
Oh,
night. Like
yep.
it's amazing. Yeah, it's absolutely amazing. And yeah, I was going to mention I love Dave's volume swell before the main solo kicks in, and you know, I've never heard a bad version of it. I love the version on Open Fire. I love the version that's on Yesterday and Today Live, and Jimmy plays it quite differently than Leonard, but it's still good. It's still got all the emotion and all the everything you could want, and yet it's a true power ballad.
It
It's
is.
still rocks. It's still heavy. There's nothing wimpy about it. It is just, but it is so completely hard on the sleeve, and here it is. And you know what Dave doesn't sing to you with his voice, he sings to you with his guitar, and
Absolutely.
it's yeah, and it kills me that this album is not one of the biggest selling rock albums of 1981, not just one of the most critically acclaimed. So yeah,
And you think about how many great albums came out in 81, and this could sit right next to all of them in arena rock, and moving pictures from Rush and Billy Squire, Don't Say No, so
when
many
we
great.
when we did
This
our
is right now.
best of 1981, it was a real. I had a real struggle with it because some of my favorite albums by bands came out this year. I mean, Earthshaker, Moving Pictures, Fair Warning, High and Dry, Escape. Like I had a
I'm with you
really,
100% on all those albums,
really hard
and me
time.
and Don't Say No for Billy Squire for me too.
Yeah, that's a great album. Triumph, Allied Forces, April Wine, Nature of the Beast, uh,
Yep.
Standing Hampton. I mean, look, I'll even admit it. I like The Elder.
I like Park. No, I've grown to like that album over the
Yeah,
years. I didn't like it when I was a kid, but I just didn't get it. I mean,
yeah.
no,
But
I don't
Earthshaker should
know.
have,
Yeah,
Earthshaker should have been easily a gold record in its initial run and gone platinum on the backs of what came after it. But
I agree.
hey, listen, folks, it's all in here. Our frustrations with why wasn't this band big, and John's one of the many folks that helped make this happen. So go get it on Amazon if you haven't yet. If you're a YT fan, if you're watching this, I'm assuming you are. So um, yeah, so third album in a lot of ways, John, would you consider this is it's not like their debut album, but it is a new beginning for them.
It was a new beginning.
The
Yeah,
first one where they're
absolutely.
just called Y&T. It's the first one for, I'm going to say, London was like a quasi major, but it was kind of a dying label when they signed to it.
It
At
was.
least A&M, they put out singles in some parts of the world. There was effort put in, and the records were probably more readily available.
Right.
So
Exactly. Oh yeah.
just
You
should have
can't.
done more. I'm and folks, if you're watching this, because you're enjoying the conversation, you don't really know much about Y&T. Thank you, but if you like classic '80s hard rock and metal, if there's one Y&T album that I just don't think it's possible to go wrong with, it is Earthshaker. So
No question.
go out and get whatever format you need. Go get yourself a copy of Earthshaker, and you can thank us later.
Absolutely.
John, thank you very much for helping to continue the Y&T deep dive.
Thank you.
And we're going to be back soon, and we're not going to stop until we are through the catalog. So I want to thank everybody for watching this edition of Tim's Vinyl Confessions.